It started with a sunrise that painted the sky in gold and crimson as I took the winding road toward my lake cabin, nestled deep in the wooded hills of Timberlake County. The silence, broken only by the calls of loons on the water and the crunch of gravel under my tires, always reminded me why I bought the land in the first place. My cabin, hand-built by my father and me over a decade ago, stood as a monument to peace, family, and the American dream. No phone towers, no city noise, just pure serenity. That dream shattered the day I arrived to find the structure I cherished flattened to rubble. Nothing stood but broken beams, cracked stone, and a torn-off sign reading private property. I thought it was a mistake, a tragic accident, or even vandalism. But the truth was far worse. A paper notice pinned to a tree near the driveway read, "Property reclaimed and cleared under HOA Ordinance 14B. Below that, in neat, heartless font, "Non-compliant structures subject to removal." My hands trembled as I stared at the official-looking notice. The Homeowners Association? I wasn't even a member. My property lay outside the HOA boundary by over a quarter mile. I had verified it myself when purchasing the land, and again, when the HOA had first sent me a letter 2 years ago demanding dues. I'd sent back a polite but firm response, along with a copy of my deed and surveyor's report. No jurisdiction, no authority. End of story, or so I had thought. Turns out the HOA president, Clifford Dane, had other ideas. Clifford, a former real estate developer turned self-proclaimed community savior, had made it his mission to unify the lakeside aesthetic. His vision didn't include hand-built log cabins or folks who preferred independence over community barbecues and color-coordinated mailboxes. According to my neighbors, he called my cabin an eyesore, an outdated relic that didn't match the community image. That didn't give him the right to destroy my property. Fueled by rage, I drove to the county recorder's office that same day. I spent hours digging through land records, cross-checking deeds, plat maps, and surveyor logs, and what I found stunned me. Not only was my cabin legally outside the HOA's reach, but I also discovered something much more significant. My great-uncle, who originally bought the land in the 1950s, had acquired not just the lot my cabin sat on, but a patchwork of lots across the region. Unbeknownst to me, many of those titles were never sold off and still listed me as the inheritor. I owned over 140 acres, including key parcels smack in the middle of the HOA-controlled subdivision. Their lakefront clubhouse, their community, dock, even their walking trails. Many were illegally built on land I technically owned. I contacted my lawyer immediately. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls, legal briefings, and formal notices. Clifford tried to claim I was fabricating documents. He even accused me of forgery in a community newsletter. That backfired fast when my legal team produced original deeds, authenticated and notarized decades earlier. The local paper caught wind of the controversy and published a story titled "HOA Destroys Cabin, Owner Reveals Hidden Land Empire." It went viral. Suddenly, neighbors who had once sided with the HOA began questioning everything. Clifford's allies distanced themselves, some resigning quietly from the board. But I wasn't done. I filed a lawsuit against the HOA for unlawful demolition, trespassing, destruction of private property, and emotional distress. While the case wound through the court system, I started making moves of my own. I began reasserting control over my scattered lots, erecting signs, fencing in areas, even blocking off the trailheads they had developed without permits. Clifford tried to bluff his way out. He called emergency meetings, wrote angry public letters, and even attempted to pressure the zoning board into revoking my building permits. But with every attempt, he only made things worse for himself. One evening, as I stood on the flattened soil where my cabin once stood, I noticed something odd in the ashes, a melted metal tag. It had been affixed to a post that once held a property marker. Someone had tried to remove it, perhaps hoping to eliminate proof of boundary lines. That clue became part of my case. Investigators started probing deeper. Former HOA board members came forward, anonymously at first, then publicly. They revealed Clifford had authorized the demolition without a full vote. He had hired a private contractor under the table to tear it down on a Sunday morning when most people were at church. That act alone made the case clear-cut. By the time my court date arrived, my legal team had stacked a mountain of evidence. Property documents, photos, witness statements, even a recording from a board member who had secretly taped Clifford bragging about cleaning up the lake view. The judge didn't take long. In a scathing decision, she ruled in my favor, awarding damages for the full rebuild of the cabin, plus punitive damages and attorney fees. Clifford was ordered to step down immediately from the HOA. But for me, justice wasn't just about money or rebuilding. It was about sending a message. You can't bully someone off their land. You can't rewrite history or trample over rights just because you have a clipboard and a vision board. And as I stood on that land with a new cabin foundation being poured, I knew the real victory was just beginning. The day the frame of my new lake cabin went up was the day I realized I wasn't just building a house. I was crafting a statement. I stood on the same land that had belonged to my family for generations, a warm mug of coffee in my hand, and a fire in my chest that the HOA had unknowingly lit. After 5 visits from the sheriff, all prompted by their false reports, and a decisive court ruling in my favor, I made a quiet vow. I wouldn't just win this fight. I'd make sure they remembered who they were dealing with. I started with a professional land survey. I hired the best firm I could find to map every inch of my property. 2 weeks later, when the results came in, I felt like I was holding a legal nuke. Their clubhouse, the community dock, walking trails, even parts of their homes were built partially or entirely on land that was legally mine. No easements, no paperwork, nothing. Just blind assumption on their part. They had no idea how badly they'd messed up. Within 48 hours, I had 8-foot black chain-link fencing installed, sectioning off the intruding structures. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Signs went up at every access point. The very next morning, I watched from my cabin's deck as HOA residents gathered at the fence line like confused cattle. Some tried arguing with the workers. Others called the police. When the officers showed up, I handed over my court order and survey documents. They turned to the residents and calmly explained, "This land is his. If you're on it, you're trespassing." The look on their faces was priceless. But I wasn't done. Fencing off wasn't enough. I knew they'd try to access from another direction. So I moved on to Phase 2, the road. After digging through old county records and deed paperwork, I discovered their main road access point ran through my land. It was under a revocable easement, meaning I could legally terminate their right to use it, and that's exactly what I did. I filed the revocation and had a gate installed. Steel-reinforced, keypad entry, security cameras, the whole 9 yards. That gate flipped the neighborhood upside down. Residents lined up in their SUVs, honking, shouting into the intercom, demanding access. I didn't answer. Instead, I issued a formal notice to the HOA. Monthly access rental fee is $200. Late fees of $100 per week apply. Their rage was volcanic. But legally, I was untouchable. The sheriff backed me up, the county office signed off, and suddenly, their neatly controlled neighborhood felt like a fortress turned prison. Soon, one of the HOA board members came banging on my door. "This is extortion," he yelled. I looked him in the eyes and replied, "No, this is rent, just like everyone else pays when they live on someone else's land." Next, I set my sights on the clubhouse. That building had hosted countless HOA meetings, parties, and smug little policy votes. It also sat smack on my land. I sent them a demand letter for 10 years of back rent, $211,400 in total. When they ignored it, I filed suit. The court ruled in my favor without hesitation. When they failed to pay, I placed a lien. Then came foreclosure. Within 3 months, that clubhouse was mine. I changed the locks and posted a new sign. It read, Timberlake Commons, open to the public. HOA members must pay $100 access. Fee. The same building where they once dictated fines and parking policies now hosted birthday parties and fishing expos, none of which they could attend without paying. Justice wasn't just served, it was catered, plated, and served with a little umbrella drink on the side. As the months passed, their community crumbled. Some residents sold their homes out of frustration. Others refused to pay HOA dues in protest. With fewer funds, the HOA couldn't maintain anything. The system they used to control others turned inward like a collapsing star. Eventually, they came crawling back, offering mediation. They offered to buy back road access, to name the clubhouse, in honor of my family. I declined. This wasn't about money. It was about dignity. About making sure no one else suffered the way I had. 6 months after the initial conflict, I was invited to speak at the local town hall on landowner rights. My story struck a chord. The county zoning board asked me to run for office. I did. And I won. Now I wasn't just protecting my land. I was rewriting the rules for the entire county. I introduced laws that forced HOAs to undergo annual boundary audits. Any fines required court approval before they could be enforced. Abuse of power was now legally punishable. I even created a public registry of HOAs that had lost legal disputes, their names forever etched in shame. The very first entry? The HOA that called the cops on me 5 times. Now, when I sit on the deck of my lake cabin, staring out at the calm waters, I remember the days I wasn't allowed to fish here. Today, there are smiling faces, kids on paddle boards, and the kind of peace that only comes after a long fight. The trails are open to everyone, but with one small condition. HOA members must request permission before stepping foot on my land. Some call me petty. Others call me a hero. Honestly, I don't care what they call me. I care that no landowner like me ever feels powerless again. Because when the quiet man stands up, he doesn't just fight back, he changes the entire system.